Hello, hello, hello. It's Pat. It is Sunday evening. Just got done walking the dog. And I have a video I need to record for Joe Spicoli. He hit me up on Instagram and asked a question that I wanted to answer here on Instagram so that everybody could hear it. Because it's a good question about web development, getting into programming. I think we've all wrestled with it if we haven't, we're not currently wrestling with it. So, Joe's question was, he's learning the basics of Ruby, and the resource that's teaching him is giving him, kind of like step by step. These are the way that we do things in Ruby. And there's a lot of learning platforms out there that approach it this way as well. The problem is that it's like learning under a microscope. So, you learn how to do return methods. You learn how to do loops and if statements, all the basics of programming, the fundamentals of what you can do in a programming language. The problem then becomes you don't know how to fit those into a larger apparatus. You don't know when will this be relevant, how will this be helpful. It's good practice, it's good form, and it does teach you the basics of a programming language, but then you're kind of left wondering, okay, how do I transition this elsewhere? And the challenge is that a lot of getting started in web development is DevOps, like just setting up an application, working with the build environment, fighting with your IDE. None of it you actually end up getting into programming until much, much, much later. So it's a very frustrating experience, and it can kind of turn you off from programming because you don't really get to see a lot of progress, and that's frustrating. So how do you get around that? So this is how I'm going to say how I did it in the way that I recommend to students. It's kind of one and the same, but you need to start small, but work on projects that you give a shit about. Like you're going to be frustrated by the whole process. You are not going to know what you're doing. A lot of what you will actually remember about, because you probably have that too, where like you spend weeks in these tutorials and then you promptly forget everything that you did because you don't apply it. You don't know how to apply it. And so you end up like building sandcastles in the surf. So start picking projects that you want to work on. The first one that I built was I was working in sales, and I was having to use Salesforce, and they didn't have shortcut keys for the inputs, and I was having to process like a ton of sales leads a day. So I built a Chrome extension that allowed me to map my shortcut keys to what was happening on the screen, so that I could boost my productivity. If you do projects that are well intentioned, but you don't care about, you're not going to have the curiosity and the drive to push through. Like if you don't care about to-do apps, if you don't care about weather apps, somebody else's example is not going to hit home for you the way that you probably hope it will. So the first step one, is to start cataloging what are all the pain points in your day, or what are all the pain points that you would like to address. Like I have an idea right now for an application. It'd be a fantastic starter application for any language. I'm fighting with Comcast. I hate Comcast. My internet is so spotty with them. I've had technicians come out like 4 times. They bailed on me 3 times. So I'm so mad. And I found out that there aren't any logs that are kept on the application when the internet goes down. So what if I built an external application that just pings my router and keeps a log of that, and then sends me an email, like a weekly report of like how many times did the internet go down. So use programming to solve your problems. Step 1 is to look at what problems, take stock of the problems that you have, and then try to solve them. Now, you might have to scale it back a bit. You might have to take it down a notch, break it up into parts, but all of those methods will come into play, all those functions, all of those patterns will come into play when you actually start building stuff And to build stuff, you need to build stuff that you have the tenacity to finish. So getting a lay of the land of what you're doing right now is more or less the ABCs of programming. Like you are learning the grammar and the syntax of the language and how things are done. But now you've got to write. You've got to say something. You've got to do something. So my advice to you, Joe, is pick stuff that you really care about. Scope them down to very small chunks. Like, for Ruby, for example, if you want to build an application that sends emails to you whenever your internet goes down, start with just logging in. Just start with authentication, getting users. Just start there. Don't worry about any of that functionality, or just have something that's like, it just pings your router whenever the internet goes down. It doesn't. You don't have to log it. You don't have to do anything with it. Take the aggregate of what you want and break it down into tiny little steps, and then start working on those bit by bit by bit by bit. And the last thing that I can recommend, and this is really helpful, it's a lot more work, so maybe don't do it if you don't want to, but it's super helpful, is blog about your experience. You don't know something until you have to explain to somebody else. And so this serves kind of two purposes. Hi, baby. Yeah, my dog's here. She's got a tennis ball. That's huge. You don't know something until you have to explain to somebody else. You really don't. Like, you think you know it, but until you have to be like, oh, this is, and especially to somebody who doesn't understand. Like, try to explain to somebody who doesn't understand programming. And what this will do, this will serve as two purposes. This is a method of programming called rubber ducking. It's a way to debug stuff when you kind of like think out loud, but you're kind of thinking with your fingertips. But also, when you have this blog, you will build this project, Joe, and you will promptly forget it. And so what this will do is this will serve as a memory jogger so that when you go down the line, you're like, how did I do this in the last app? And all you have to do is just pull up. You're essentially making like very long form notes to your future self. You don't have to blog for anybody besides yourself. You don't have to expect anything to come of it. You don't even have to publish it. But web development is about how you learn. It's not about how much code you write. It's not about what you know, because you're going to forget it. So get good at understanding how things work and how to look stuff up. And if you do yourself a favor, hey, it's Eddie. What's up, buddy? If you do yourself a favor of writing stuff down so that you can look it up in the future, that's going to be how you're going to cement a lot of these concepts. So I want to thank Joe for his question, and I'm going to post this up on social media so you can see it. I really hope this is helpful. Joe, hit me up with more questions if you have any more. I would love to see you get off the ground and going with this stuff, because I think Eddie and I can agree. Programming has been good to us, but it has been a long slog to get there. So thanks so much for your question, Joe. I'll see you later, buddy. Take care.